Facts versus opinions. Intellectual righteousness is based on two facts and one opinion. Our inability to witness God leads many people to believe any ideas about God are just opinions, so we introduce our founding principles as facts in the hopes that you consider them long enough to realize you cannot argue against them without contradicting yourself. If you think something you disagree with is just somebody else's opinion, it is easy to dismiss without considering whether it is right or wrong. If you think you're dealing with a subject that can only have opinions, what is more appealing or seems more comforting is more believable than what is the most accurate and consistent. We remind everyone facts must exist on the subject since we can't all be right while having differing and opposing views. Some may argue because we cannot directly experience God, there is no real way to prove God is real. It may be impossible to keep someone from denying the truth because there is no unavoidable fact that forces people to admit what is real. But we can provide empirical evidence that shows why things need an origin, use the law of non-contradiction to show why the universe is finite, relate math to reality in order to describe the origin, and give you good reason to hold the origin in higher regard than anything originated. God exists, and you shouldn't need faith to believe it. Intellectual righteousness begins with the belief that God should not be immune to critical thinking or objective scrutiny. Whatever convinced you to accept everything else as true should work with God too. Learning is a process, and there is no reason to agree with any concept that expects you to skip over it in order to accept it. It is easy to assume our inability to perceive God with any of our five senses makes it impossible to understand God in a normal way. The problem with such thinking is none of our senses are seen as reliable except in basic matters because all of them can be fooled. Even though we are fallible and capable of making mistakes, when things get complicated, we trust things like empirical evidence, the scientific method, logic, and math most. If this were not true, magicians would be more than just entertainers in the public eye. We don't know how they do the tricks, but we have enough sense to know their illusions. Conventional thinking to produce consistent but surprising results. The goal of intellectual righteousness is to use our normal way of thinking when it comes to everything else to explore what we have reason to believe when it comes to God. Because of this purpose, it is the only theological view that makes claims and backs them up. It uses common sense and math to make the case for monotheism, or worshiping and believing in God in general. To begin trying to understand God by focusing on any particular version would be like standing at the bottom of a slippery slope while thinking you're on top of the mountain. Instead of pointing out the flaws in other people's beliefs, we seek to find out what can be proven one way or another about the commonly held ideas. This exploration revealed a contradiction most people have accepted concerning infinity, an easily overlooked fact about reality that can be demonstrated using absolute value as an example, and the truth about God is much different from what is typically discussed. These results may surprise you, but they are consistent internally and externally. Check for yourself, and you'll wonder why no one did this sooner. Checks. Every box intellectual righteousness fills every need of someone who wants reason to be confident in what they believe about God one way or the other. It heavily relies on logic and math to support all of its points, but it isn't so advanced that it can be dismissed as just theory. It uses the scientific method as a means of providing proof without looking to the past for evidence or guidance. Here are some of the benefits. Respect the intellect, no faith or magic. Or reason to believe, logic and math. Foolproof, too basic to be just theory. Reason to believe, beneficial facts. Modern and progressive, no ancient books or agenda. Respect the intellect, intellectual. Righteousness gets its name from its anti-faith attitude. Since we can't sense God, then what we believe about God should at least make sense, or there would be no real reason to believe it. We begin with why anyone would be open to believe in God in the first place. Reason to believe, cause and effect makes belief in a beginning for everything a no-brainer. It is so easy to accept, questioning it can be confusing. We use logic and empirical evidence to prove the universe is finite and must have an infinite origin. To avoid word games and strawman arguments, we use absolute value to demonstrate why everything measurable must have a beginning and to describe the attributes of the origin. Foolproof. Human beings are flawed, so anything we believe should be met with skepticism. Math has consistently been what we've relied on as the way to validate any conclusions. You may be able to dismiss certain ideas that seem irrelevant or detached from reality as just theory, but that should be impossible when dealing with the core concept that makes math so trustworthy. Reason to believe. Confidence in belief and protection from deception aren't the only benefits of learning the truth about God. It also helps you attain inner peace and self mastery by unlocking the power of positive perspective in any situation. It would help you minimize the negative impact of adversity while maximizing the ability to savor any prosperity. Modern and progressive. This is not some new way to reinterpret old ideas, so we don't rely on any old books as evidence to support any of our points. Morality is linked to success and social harmony more than it is to righteousness, so there is no inherent set of rules to follow. As individuals, we are free to decide how we live our lives, knowing we must be willing to face whatever consequences as well.